The Mafia, criminal organizations, and shady oligarchs have always had a presence in the world of combat sports. These types of people have long been drawn to violent sports and have looked for ways to get close to famous fighters. For example, the well-known Pride fighting organization in Japan was created and run directly by the Yakuza, and the legendary Mike Tyson was often seen surrounded by dangerous gangsters and mobsters. But in recent years, combat sports have started to move away from the dirty business and mafia influence. Today's fighters are focused on making money legally, building a public image, and keeping their distance from shady characters. But that doesn't apply to Russian fighters or the Russian mafia. Over there, things work very differently. The mafia in Russia operates at the highest levels of government and power. Many oligarchs and criminal bosses have deep connections to the Russian government, or they are government officials, or even members of law enforcement. With that kind of protection, they can run illegal businesses, commit serious crimes, and punish anyone who crosses them. One of their favorite hobbies is sponsoring famous athletes, especially fighters. It's not just about status. These men genuinely love combat sports. Fighters represent power, discipline, and masculinity. By surrounding themselves with fighters, these oligarchs craft an image of themselves as strong, fearless leaders. One of the best examples is Ziyavudin Magomedov, a billionaire who became Khabib Nurmagomedov's main backer. He paid for Khabib's surgeries, training camps, coaches, everything. Magomedov wanted to look like a respectable businessman, and having a sports icon like Khabib and his legendary father Abdulmanap on his side helped with that image. But Magomedov didn't get rich by accident. His empire grew thanks to close ties with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who handed him government contracts worth billions. Once Medvedev lost influence, things fell apart fast. Magomedov was arrested and charged with running a criminal organization, embezzling state funds, and pulling off huge construction fraud schemes. That same year, while Magomedov sat in jail, the Russian media started talking about a new backer for Khabib. In 2018, Khabib started showing up at a brand new fight promotion in Russia, the Russian Cage Fighting Championship. The man behind it was Igor Altushkin, a billionaire and the head of the Russian copper company. And the more you learn about him, the more dangerous he sounds. Altushkin owns the Ural Mining and Metallurgical Company, one of the biggest copper producers in the country. According to Forbes, his net worth is over $5 billion. But here's the twist. He's not just a businessman. He's deeply connected to Putin's inner circle and is a major supporter of Russia's ruling party, United Russia. Some people even call him the unofficial ruler of Yekaterinburg and the entire Sverdlovsk region. Locals say he has more influence than the mayor or even the police. At the time, Altushkin was working hard to clean up his image. He threw his energy into sports, launching fight events, sponsoring athletes, and bringing in big names like Khabib to raise his profile. Khabib was a regular VIP guest at these tournaments and often praised Altushkin in interviews. The event is really well organized. Igor Altushkin is doing a great job developing sports in the region. Khabib's presence brought media buzz, and soon Altushkin's events were all over the news. But Altushkin didn't stop there. That same year, he opened a martial arts academy and, of course, invited Khabib to the grand opening. Former boxing world champion Kostya Tszyu was also in attendance. At first glance, nothing about it seemed suspicious. A fight promotion, tournaments, connections with famous fighters. Nothing illegal, right? But there was a catch. The gym wasn't just a regular martial arts center, it served a completely different purpose. In 2019, with support from local authorities, Altushkin announced plans to build a church. He chose a scenic public area in Yekaterinburg that was beloved by the locals. This sparked major protests, as residents fought to protect their favorite spot. At one point, protesters tore down a fence around the construction site. As tensions escalated, fighters from Altushkin's gym, the same one Khabib helped open, arrived to assist the police. They threatened and pushed the locals, causing them to flee in fear. The club's president was Russian MMA fighter Ivan Shtirkov. This incident revealed that Altushkin was building his own private army to handle conflicts with brute force. While riot police had to stay within legal boundaries, Altushkin's fighters operated without such restrictions. And if any trouble came up, they were shielded by Altushkin's deep connections within law enforcement. But these weren't the only accusations against Altushkin. Locals claimed he pressured competitors to sell their businesses or merge with his holding company by threatening them with criminal charges or inspections. It turned out that Altushkin is funding the Ural Battalion, which is fighting on Russia's side in the war against Ukraine. This battalion is equipped with the most advanced weapons and gear. Some say the support from the oligarch is unlimited. Although he never fully replaced Magomedov, Altushkin likely became a new source of protection and support for Khabib. Rumor has it he paid Khabib handsomely for attending his events and publicly praising him. But Altushkin played an even bigger role in Petr Yan's life. Since 2018, Petr Yan has lived in Yekaterinburg, Altushkin's unofficial territory. Peter represents Altushkin's gym and thanks him in nearly every interview. During this time, the oligarch funded Peter's training in Thailand, paid for his flights, and even sent locals from Yekaterinburg to UFC events to cheer him on. Many Russians started calling Petr Yan Altushkin's fighter. Just like Magomedov once gifted Khabib a new Mercedes as a sign of respect and friendship, Altushkin did the same. After Yan won the UFC championship, the billionaire gifted him a brand new Mercedes. In Russia, almost every top fighter seems to have a patron and protector, usually a controversial oligarch known for shady dealings. This partnership benefits both sides. The fighter helps improve the oligarch's public image, portraying him as a man of the people. In return, the oligarch solves the fighter's problems and provides financial support. There are even rumors that Altushkin holds athletes' money for them, keeping it safe from government seizures or powerful threats. If we've managed to unpack that part, the next one has been bothering me for a long time. In recent years, there's been a lot of buzz online about the wealth of Arman Tsarukyan. His photos and videos with luxury cars and a lavish lifestyle have raised eyebrows. Despite not yet making a name for himself or winning a title, he somehow had endless money to spend on a luxurious life.
Я подрался, и там земляки мои там выделили мне машину, там фантом, короче, личный самолет, private jet, вертолет, короче, все, что можно. И самую крутую гостиницу, и там виллы такие. Выходит Дана Уайт и Хантер. И они садятся в обычную BMW, и они сели в свою BMW, и я сажусь, этот фантом, короче, там сзади еще машина, типа охрана, кого охраняет, сам не знаю, да.
Он кто такой? Дана уже.
И я вот так на светофоре стою, и Дана рядом стоит сзади тоже, но мы знаем, что это его машина. И водитель, который у меня сидел, он раньше катал Дану. И он машет Дане, и Дана спускает окно, и ему машет. И я вот так спускаюсь, и он такой: «Что ты здесь делаешь, блядь?»
Later, it turned out that he has a very wealthy and influential father, and he's not even trying to hide it. I became deeply curious about who his father really is. I dug into every source I could find to figure out who he is and what he does. I had a strong suspicion that he might be tied to a criminal network and possibly involved in illegal activity with support from the government. But after weeks of research, I found nothing solid. All that's publicly known is that he's in the construction business and extremely rich. Although, I did uncover a few clues. We've already seen that in Russia, serious wealth tends to gather around those with close and trusted ties to the president or other high-ranking officials. With that in mind, I started to look differently at photos of a young Arman Tsarukyan posing with Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev. As it turns out, Putin met Arman twice at Platform S70, a high-profile professional combat sambo tournament. On both occasions, the president personally awarded Arman a championship belt and congratulated him warmly. Very few Russian athletes get that kind of moment. A personal photo with the president and words of praise from the country's top leaders. That's when I began to suspect that Arman's father might be more than just a rich businessman. Maybe, like Altushkin or Magomedov, he has deep connections to the Russian government, and perhaps, as a favor to an old friend, Putin showed up at Arman's fights and offered his public support. One piece of evidence that supports this theory: Arman's father has reportedly been denied a US visa 3 times. I found this information online, and it stuck with me. Why? Because in today's world, anyone with close ties to the Russian government usually runs into serious problems when trying to enter Western countries. Ramzan Kadyrov, the head of Chechnya and a longtime friend of Putin, is permanently banned from entering the US and Europe. Igor Altushkin and his companies have been sanctioned by the US. Another close ally of Putin, billionaire Roman Abramovich, was also banned from entering the US and EU. His overseas bank accounts were frozen. It's widely believed that all of these individuals support and help fund Putin's war in Ukraine. So while this is still just a theory, there's a real possibility that Arman's father has similar ties, and may even be involved in illegal activities behind the scenes. While most oligarchs use MMA fighters to boost their public image, the president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, has created something much darker and far more dangerous. He's not just the head of a Russian region. With Putin's full support, Kadyrov has become one of the most powerful figures in Russia. That protection gives him the freedom to do whatever he wants: blackmail, extortion, kidnapping, and violent crackdowns on anyone who gets in his way. At the same time, Kadyrov has always stayed close to the world of MMA. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, Khamzat Chimaev, and boxing world champion Artur Beterbiev have all posed with him, smiling for photos and maintaining friendly ties. But behind the smiles lies a much darker truth, one that very few people dare to speak about. For example, Ramzan Kadyrov once hired Abdulkarim Edilov to train his children. Edilov was no ordinary coach. He was a professional MMA fighter who had even competed in the UFC. Impressed by his loyalty, Kadyrov promoted him. First, Edilov became his chief of staff. Then, he was named Deputy Prime Minister of Chechnya. But in 2022, everything changed. Edilov suddenly resigned, and not long after, he was found dead. No official cause of death was ever released, and the investigation was quickly shut down. Locals say he had a falling out with Kadyrov, and in Chechnya, that's often a death sentence. Mysterious deaths and disappearances are still frighteningly common there. In 2022, chaos erupted at the Moscow office of Wildberries, Russia's largest online retailer. The confrontation turned violent, and several people were killed. Shockingly, among the attackers were MMA fighters trained at Kadyrov's Akhmat Fight Club. One of the wounded was Umar Chichayev, a former Akhmat member and a well-known name in Chechen MMA circles. According to reports, the assault was ordered by Kadyrov himself. He allegedly sent his men to escort the ex-husband of the Wildberries founder into her office. But when building security tried to stop them, a gunfight broke out, leaving multiple dead. So yes, Kadyrov uses MMA fighters not just for PR, but as his personal army. And the violence doesn't stop there. Some of Kadyrov's closest MMA allies have been sent to fight in the war in Ukraine. Multiple reports and confirmed videos prove this. Fighters make ideal soldiers. Mentally tough, physically conditioned, and trained not to fear pain or back down. They follow orders, and they don't break easily. Some MMA stars aren't just involved, they're key players in something much darker. The clearest example? Khamzat Chimaev. One of his main jobs beyond fighting is to glorify Ramzan Kadyrov, and he does it well. After every win, Chimaev gives a public shout-out to Kadyrov from inside the octagon. He appears in propaganda videos, calling Kadyrov his brother and praising him like a hero. In return, he's rewarded with luxury cars, like brand new Mercedes-Benzes, access to Kadyrov's private jet, and massive piles of cash. But that's just the surface. Behind the scenes, Chimaev acts as a recruiter. He travels across Europe, quietly seeking out promising Chechen fighters. He builds trust with them, then brings them into Kadyrov's world. Suddenly, these fighters start wrapping themselves in Kadyrov's flag, praising him on social media, and pledging their loyalty. From there, they follow one of three paths. Some become Kadyrov's personal enforcers. Some get sent to fight in Ukraine. Others stay in the spotlight, continuing their careers while acting as loud, loyal messengers for the Chechen dictator. This network gets bigger every year, pulling in more fighters, more influence, and more power. It's one of the most well-crafted and disturbing systems I've ever seen. In the end, it's hard to say that any top Russian fighter is truly free. Sooner or later, someone from the government or oligarchy shows up, using pressure, blackmail, or offering money and protection. And at that point, the fighter doesn't really have a choice. The connection is made whether they want it or not. And once the deal is made, fighters often end up supporting shady figures with terrible reputations, helping them look like heroes in the eyes of the public. To be fair, fighters do get something in return. It's not just money, it's connections. And in Russia, connections are everything. Without them, you can lose everything overnight. Just look at Khabib. He was once the nation's hero, then suddenly hit with a huge, unexplained debt. That case alone shows the brutal truth. In a country like Russia, if you don't have powerful protection, you're vulnerable. So these fighters align themselves with men who can keep them safe. Men who often operate more like mafia bosses than public servants. And now, I want to ask you, what do you think about this alliance? Is it justified? Can these fighters ever break free? Or should we understand them, maybe even forgive them?